I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
This is the rare nighttime recording, and I've got a little something to tipple over here on the side, so I'm excited to see how it goes.
You mean you're drinking right now?
Yeah, I got a glass of wine, and I made sure it's a natural wine. Given that I'm talking to you, I knew you'd pick up through the mic if it was something manufactured or had a chemical.
I am jealous. Right after this, I'm going to go grab some food, and we'll have a drink or two in your honor.
You haven't talked much about natural wine. Has the Ozempic killed the passion?
No, it's just, outside of Mexico City, it's just hard to get natural wine in like Bogota or Colombia in general. It's not like Mexico City. So when I was in New York, I devoured natural wine, and now I do a little more cocktails in Latin America.
And so, just to skip to the Judy alert, but we'll weave in the alcohol. Where are you right now? I know you're in Colombia, but I don't know where.
I'm actually in Cartagena, right outside of the walled city. Just sort of, I'm here with my friend Diego, who is celebrating his 30th birthday, and he wanted to come to Cartagena, so here we are.
So what's going to be your go-to celebratory drink tonight, post-podcast for the birthday?
The thing that they really like to drink is that sort of sugar liqueur. It's called like aguardiente.
So do you find the cocktails to be super sweet generally?
They can be pretty sweet. Yeah.
I'm a real sour cocktail man.
I'm a sour cocktail man too.
Lime. Fill it up.
Yeah. Well, they do. I mean, here in Cartagena, there's just a lot of mojitos, so you can do sort of just traditional beach drinks. Maybe I'll do that tonight.
Have I ever told you about our house cocktail here in Boston?
I think you have.
We make something called the Southern Baptist. That's the name of the drink, and it's awesome ginger syrup that's really, really spicy, lime juice, and bourbon. It is perfection.
That sounds good. You have to make me one next time I'm there in Boston.
And we are pre-recording a little bit here, but I gotta say, Ryan, I'm feeling morose right now because one of my great heroes, Tom Lehrer, has died. You're familiar with his oeuvre?
A little bit, less than you though. You're really shook up about this. This is how I was with Malcolm Jamal Warner.
So anyone who doesn't know Tom Lehrer, first of all, he's 97, and he lives right here in Cambridge. But he's world famous. He's had West End shows in London that were reviews of his songs. He rose to prominence in the 60s, and he used to go on television in the U.S. in the 60s.
The Harvard man.
And he wrote Fight Fiercely Harvard, and he wrote tens of other very, very funny songs. The one that you're going to know, Ryan, is that he wrote the Elements song, which is all the elements of the periodic table set to the Rodgers and Hammerstein.
And back when he wrote it, there was only like 26 elements.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's been revisions. And he really took on the establishment. He was big during the Cold War, and he wrote all these great, very funny kind of Dr. Strangelove sort of songs about nuclear war and bombs. He just had a hilarious, creepy kind of sense of humor. And you don't know this? I actually met him when I was in college.
Really?
Yeah, I was in college. I was writing a lot of songs and musicals, and I discovered that he lived in town, and I hand wrote a letter to him, and I said, can I take you out to brunch? And, I kind of thought he would pay, but he actually took me up and let me cover his brunch. And we went out to brunch and had a great time. We talked all about humor and politics. And something that I distinctly remember is that it was during the George W. Bush presidency, and he thought that was too depressing to joke about. He was like, I don't know how anybody would do political comedy today. So imagine, I have to think he might have been happy to go.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, gosh, what a life. I encourage people to read his Wikipedia, because this dude did everything. He was hanging out with David Frost. He wrote for the Electric Company. He wrote songs for Dodge automobiles.
Well, and the other thing is, he stopped performing in 1968. He was like huge for like 3 or 4 years, and he had a life in academia. He was a lecturer at a bunch of universities, and yeah, he did. This was like not his full time gig. He just kind of like put these off on the side and became world famous for it. Quite amazing.
That is very cool. Well, all his songs are apparently in public domain, so I think you could play a little snippet for us right now,
That do
Kiernan.
you know he mentioned that during our brunch? He said because he had no heirs, he wasn't married, he had no children. He
Was
was
he?
I yes.
Yeah. Oh,
I know I'm waiting for you to finish the
I mean,
question.
was he a bachelor confirmed?
I mean, he was a confirmed bachelor. Whether you know what his personal preference was, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that we just had a perfectly genial affair. But you know
Oh
what
man.
you know what he seemed to like me, which usually indicates that he probably was. um, Now, Ryan, the other thing I want to touch on is, as you know, I'm deep into London planning. I'm just when this airs, I will be in London. Super excited to go back to the city that I lived in. I haven't been there since pre-COVID, and famously, you've got a story about the Churchill War Rooms, which I very stupidly avoided for all the times I've been there, including the year I lived there, because somebody once described it to me as like, oh yeah, they've got dummies of Churchill. And I was like, dummies of Churchill? What is it, the Hall of the Presidents at Disney World?
Yeah.
I don't
My
want to see dummies
gosh.
of Churchill.
Yeah. The Churchill War Rooms have a lot more to offer than that.
I know this is what I've learned
Yeah.
since, and I've been yearning to go back. And I've booked the tickets. We've got the time. We're absolutely going to the Churchill War Rooms. And I was keeping in mind if those tickets weren't available, I was going to pull what you did, which that becoming a member of the Imperial War Museum.
Well, I think you should be one anyway. You're such a big fan.
You know me, empires and war just can't get enough.
You need to rewatch The Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman because that's
Oh,
actually filmed in the Churchill War
you know
Rooms.
what? I think. Oh, I did not know that. That's
I'm sorry,
awesome.
that's not true. They were totally recreated based on the Churchill War Rooms.
Okay.
So
Let's
not
weave
as
that
good.
false information. No, I think that's a great tip because, God, the last like portrayal I saw of Winston Churchill was John Lithgow in The Queen, and you know John Lithgow is like 5 feet above what Churchill
Yeah.
was. Sure, he's like half the weight. It just didn't work. It is a bizarre casting.
Yeah, I like Gary Oldman's Churchill. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a plane watch for me. I'm saying it right here.
Fantastic. Well, you're gonna have a really good time. I'm jealous. You're gonna go to London. You're going with your mom. You seen any theater?
We are. We're seeing two shows. We have two shows booked. I'm maybe going to fit in a third if I can find the time. We're going to see a revival of Oliver, which will actually be my second time seeing Oliver in the West End. Last time, Mr. Bean was playing Fagin. Amazing. Amazing.
The West End always gets good Oliver productions. I grew up on that album with Jonathan Price as
Yeah,
Fagin.
yeah, it'll be great. Obviously, it's wonderful to see. Oliver's a perfect musical to see in London, and then we're going to see Operation Mincemeat, which is actually also
Ooh,
on Broadway, and it's about a World War II. We're going to have a very World War II
yeah.
themed trip.
Well, that's when in London.
It's about
Last thing that happened there.
it's about I've actually Catherine and I did the audiobook of Operation Mincemeat when we were on a national parks road trip, and it's this hilarious story of British intelligence officers kind of bumbling their way into this plot to throw the Nazis off about where they were going to attack, and it worked. And all these things go wrong. It's very very funny. So looking forward to that. And then the one that I'm thinking would be fun is I think it would be fun to take mom to the Tower of London, maybe go to Henry VIII's castle that you can visit, and then try to go see Six, which is the kind of Hamilton-y sort of musical about the six wives.
Yes, it's like a pop rock show.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah,
But I hear it's funnier for people who like were listening to pop music in the 90s and 2000s because it kind of plays on all that.
yeah,
So
and that's
I don't know that
exactly
it would
you.
ring her bell enough. Yeah, no,
That's you.
it's
Yeah,
perfect for me. It's perfect for me.
yeah.
So we'll see if we have time. But really, I'm having just such a great time putting together the schedule. And Churchill War Rooms, I've been thinking about you.
No, I am so jealous. You're gonna have a great time. Get those tickets in advance.
Well, right, and I'll say, hot tip: the theater tickets in London are about half the price of what they are in New York. I don't know. Something during COVID switched where all the tickets to Broadway are like $300 now. You can still get great tickets for like $120 in London.
That's crazy, right? I mean, it has to do a lot with the real estate and things like that, but
And
it's
yeah,
always been
that must
true.
be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but that's why I'm so hungry to keep buying up tickets. I'm like, God, let me get my fill of theater.
Yeah, well, that'll be fun. I have not been to London for a minute, so you'll be over there, and then I'm over in Dublin in September. So we'll have
Oh, we'll be
some episodes.
passing by. Maybe we could do a follow up to getting Broadway tickets. We could do West End tickets,
Oh,
produce
that'll be good.
another famous flop of an episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not as hard there because it's just cheaper. So
Now, Ryan, I'm very excited about today's guest. So, it's been a little bit since we've had an author. We're pretty picky with what travel authors we come on. Lots of travel books come out every
lots
year.
of emails from founders of travel companies who want to come on
Yeah,
our
we get
show.
a lot of PR, and this one I actually reached out to him, which is always a good sign. So his name is Daniel Stables, and Daniel Stables wrote a book called Fiesta, and the whole premise is that he traveled all around the world, and he gives kind of the cultural context and the history, kind of anthropology around different sorts of celebrations and parties that happen around the world, and he talks about all the traditions. It's such a cool idea, and that's what that is really a way to hook me on your travel book, an idea I haven't heard about yet.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really fun idea. I was brainstorming like what fiestas, what festivals have I been to, and traveling, and it's not something that I've sought out all that often, but I really, I'm going to listen to this interview because I'd like to hit up a few. I've never been to Mardi Gras, I've never been to Carnival,
But
so
you have done Day of the Dead, which is a major one. That's very much on my list.
yeah, I've done Day of the Dead post James Bond, so post the reboot. And then I've done, obviously gay prides in New York and Mexico City and DC, and those are, definitely qualify, I think. And then, Berlin does that huge like Christmas festival where you drink like the Glutben,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I've done that, so that's been fun.
Yeah, you've touched some of it. I will say he goes super, I mean, all corners of the earth. So it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna add a bunch of stuff to your list. So I think it's time that we take off to talk to Daniel Stables about his awesome book, Fiesta.
Let's talk to Daniel. Cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
Our guest today is Daniel Stables, who traveled the world attending and analyzing festivals and ceremonies of all kinds: religious, cultural, ancient, modern pretending to be ancient. The book is called Fiesta, and I'm a big, big fan of it. Daniel, welcome to Out of Office.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start right at the beginning. When did you come up with this idea of a book that's festival themed? Honestly, it's such a good hook for a book. I was kind of shocked that nobody had done that yet.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. I think I always so I've been working as a travel writer for the last sort of decade, really. And initially I used to write guidebooks. And every time I would travel either for work or just for fun, um, I always loved being in somewhere when a festival was going on, just because, there's times in the calendar where everything's just so much more vivid, vibrant, not just obviously literally, we're talking like costumes and the smells of festival food and the sounds of music and stuff like that, but also just everything's turned up to 11. People's personalities, inhibitions stripped away, altered states of consciousness often engendered by various different things. And so they're just fun, really. And so I always kind of thought, oh, well, one day I'd like to do a book, like a sort of travelogue type book about festivals. And then I think it was sort of 2019 kind of time, I started thinking, right, I really need to do this now. And then 2020, obviously everything just went out the window with COVID, and festivals were pretty much the last thing, for good reason, to come back. So it's been germinating for a long, long time, but there's bits in the book which go back to experiences that I was having when I was traveling sort of, like 10 years ago. And they go right up to a year, about a year ago from now. So it's quite a broad spread. It's been a long time coming.
Well, and you travel all over the world. I mean, you're from Indonesia to Burning Man in the U.S. You're from England. You go to you speak to a couple of United Kingdom festivals, and I'm curious. Obviously, a tens of thousands of festivals around the world that you could have attended. So how did you do the research to narrow it down to this list? And did you kind of unearth the themes that guide you through these different festivals afterward, or were you casting based on what you wanted to write in the book?
Yeah, I think to answer your last question first, I think the themes kind of emerged as I went through. You know, when I started off, I was thinking, well, I started off by making a massive list of festivals. That was like the first thing I did.
Uh-huh.
And
Spreadsheet or Word doc?
I wish I could say spreadsheet. I'm not that proficient with Excel, so yeah, it's just a Word doc.
Most authors, it wouldn't be a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was thinking, well, I could do it month by month. Obviously, festivals tend to be a seasonal thing. I could do it month by month, or I could do it, I don't know, continent by continent, kind of like, but I realized kind of doing it divided by time is not necessarily that smart, because then, I mean, if there happened to be two festivals at the same time of year that I wanted to include, then I didn't want to be held back from doing that. So the themes kind of began to emerge organically as I went to more and more of them, and I realized, oh, actually, there's lots of similarities between these things, even in really, really different cultures, which are quite kind of interesting. So for example, there's a chapter about food festivals. There's a chapter about festivals that strike towards these altered states of consciousness, like I mentioned before, whether that's through drugs or alcohol, or the example I actually used in that one deliberately was one that was nothing to do with drugs or alcohol, which was a Sufi Islamic festival in Turkey, where they
this is for folks who have seen the imagery of whirling dervishes. This is the center of that ceremony.
That's right. Yeah. So that's kind of an example of, like, I think travel writing is about discovery, right? In various forms. So you don't want to. I always try and resist doing stuff that seems too obvious. So I didn't want to. So whenever I tell people I'm writing a book about festivals here in the UK, they would always say, "Do you mean like music festivals?"
Right.
That's what most people
right.
think of. And then they would say, "Is Glastonbury in it? Glastonbury Festival, which is our biggest, most famous festival, music festival." And the answer is, I mean, Glastonbury Festival is in it, because Glastonbury is actually a really interesting example of a festival which kind of takes a lot of these elements from traditional festivals in a kind of conscious way and repackages them as like the ultimate bohemian kind of gathering. And it's an amazing experience, and it's a really cool place. But I didn't want to just do a festival about a chapter about Glastonbury Festival, because it's like, it's too familiar, you know?
Right.
And so, but by the same token, I didn't just go, what's the furthest away, most exotic sounding thing I can find, and just focus on that, because like you said, I deliberately did a couple of things in the UK as well, and obviously it's convenient for me to do that, but it's also I think it's really, really important with travel writing, when you're writing about culture and different cultures across the world, it's really important to also turn that same gaze on yourself and your own culture, because otherwise, you know, you fall into this kind of slightly colonial, kind of traditional, like travel writing was in the 19th and 20th century, to be honest.
You have a lot of fun poking fun at missionaries recounting.
yeah,
which
exactly,
I really like. Ryan and I, my co-host and I, we both grew up painfully Catholic, and so
right.
a lot of your, you do some great quotes and then kind of poke fun at. You can always look at missionary accounts of what native celebrations were like, and I think you do a great job of avoiding that. You immerse yourself in the history and culture of where these ceremonies are coming from, and you have a little bit of fun, like winking humor at it, but you're never laughing at the people and why this is important to them.
Well, yeah, I think that's it. It's like, the last thing you should be doing with travel writing is going like, oh, look how weird these people are, because they do things differently to us. But by the same token, I think sometimes people tread on eggshells too much and go, we shouldn't even point out cultural difference and variety. And actually, you should, and we should celebrate it. But the point is, you have to come at it from a point of, not aren't these people weird because they're different from me? It's more the point of, God, aren't we all as humans fascinating and bizarre and strange and messy and interesting and profound and beautiful and all those things, regardless of what culture you're talking about. Because the thing is, these things are universal, and festivals are universal. That, you know, pretty much everybody has taken part in one or in many. We can all recognize them in our own culture, and everyone knows what it's like to take part in one. So I think when you have that comparative thing, looking at different ones across the world and different societies, you realize the similarities between us by celebrating those differences, because, as I say, these universal themes come up time and time again.
Yeah, there's two instances in the book that reminds me of, and that I felt connected to. One was when you were speaking to a gentleman in the Shetlands. Now I think is it pronounced Uphalia?
Uphalia, that's right. Yeah.
Uphalia. And you were talking about the construction of these things that are all going to be burned in the end. And one of the guys just says, you know, there's very little to do here in the winter.
Yeah.
And
I think you put it in a slightly more polite way than he did.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little less profane, but
yeah.
You know, I think that is a real driving force between these sort of tentpole events that different cultures put all across the world, which is, you know, a lot of times you're just looking for diversions during a dark time of year, or during something to break up the monotony of work and, you know, just like survival. And I think you spotlight a lot of the fun times that has. The other is you come back a few times in the book to this idea of festivals as like a liminal space. So it's taking you out of your ordinary life. It's reversing roles, you know, the hierarchy in your society, or it's basically just giving you a pause. You said the status quo turned upside down was one of your examples in these sort of role reversals. But I thought you really grounded it. You said the hazy, dateless week between Christmas and New Year. And for, you know, a Western American who grew up Christian, that really rang true. I was like, yeah, that's like the one week of the year where people seem to pause, where you actually spend time with your family. You do all these things that you don't do all the other 51 weeks of the year. And that, you know, when you take it to these less familiar cultures, it immediately connected that even in this, you know, super tech heavy, especially like work driven American world, there is still that time, that 1 week a year.
Yeah. And everyone's like, is it Monday today? Like, nobody knows what day of the week it is.
Right. The only other time is when you visit Disney World that it feels like that. You forget what day of the week it is.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the great things about festivals generally, I think, is they make, you know, they make us forget ourselves in the best way, and that's kind of the point of them. You know, as you said, like even in modern Western society, where we're so obsessed with productivity, work all the time, we still allow ourselves these times, like that week between Christmas and New Year, and I think it's partly, you know, we need it. Our brains need it. We need to kind of reboot. But I think sometimes they're geared towards that. I mean, I'll go back to, again, this thing of altered states of consciousness, but it's because I feel like that maybe more than anything else, that's what festivals are geared towards, which is kind of forgetting yourself, you know, like forgetting the ego, transcending day-to-day worries and stuff like that, in kind of in pursuit of connection with something bigger than ourselves, whether that's family, you know, wider society, our community, our culture, whatever we mean by that, our friends, our, you know, the music that you're listening to at this festival, God, possibly, if that's what you know, you're into. So yeah, I think that's definitely one of the pretty much completely universal things about festival, and that's what differentiates festival from the wider sense of ritual, because, you know, rituals, lots of these things I describe in the book are rituals, but they're communal rituals, and I think festivals are always geared towards that communality, you know, connection with. I mean, you mentioned the liminal stuff. I won't go sort of too heavy into the like anthropological stuff, but I touch on it a bit in the book. I was an anthropology grad at university.
I picked up on that. I had a guess.
Passion in there. So there's liminality, this idea of kind of when these threshold states between I mean, like for example, the week between Christmas and New Year, but also in between rites of passage, like when you're graduating university or high school or whatever. Um, when you're in between these phases of your life, you're in a liminal phase, and there's this idea that these kind of liminal states, which festivals create as well, because day-to-day life is kind of suspended, and then suddenly everyone's on this level playing field. And the idea is that ultimately it brings people it, when we leave that state and we return to everyday life, it brings people are kind of held together more strongly as a result of it somehow. And I think definitely those feelings of like communal strength definitely are kind of the point of festivals, really.
Yeah, so let's dive into a couple of the individual festivals that are representative, and as I say, it ranges from sort of the funny to the serious. So let's start funny. The Cooper's Hill cheese rolling in Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
Describe what that is and how it fits into that framework.
Okay, so Cooper's Hill. So this is a traditional English festival. Happens very close to where I grew up, which is in the southwest of England. So it's the county of Gloucestershire, and it's basically a race down a steep hill, Cooper's Hill, in pursuit of a huge wheel of cheese. I think it's a 9-pound wheel of cheese, double Gloucester cheese,
Right.
and it's actually it represents the beautiful sort of folly and bizarreness of festivals, because it's actually physically impossible in terms of the speed and terminal velocity and stuff like that
Sure.
for a human to ever catch the cheese. So the way it actually works is they release the cheese, they roll the cheese down the hill, and the people they roll after it as quickly as possible, and they try and catch the cheese. But it's impossible. Nobody can ever catch the cheese. But the person who crosses the finish line first gets to keep the cheese. And they're like bouncing down. I mean, this year's event was not too long ago. I think it was in June or May. And there's some of the footage on social media of like a guy just in the course of bouncing did a whole, I think it was either a double backflip or something. And you can see because they go so fast and they bounce off the ground so hard.
Yeah.
And the amount of broken bones and stuff is crazy. There's kind of metal fences at the bottom and just a lineup of ambulances, because they're just a constant stream of people getting taken to hospital. Amazingly, no one's died actually yet doing it.
It's pretty incredible.
The cheese gods must be kind of looking out for them. I've got to say, I mean, that's one of those things, and there are quite a few British festivals, English festivals, where it is quite difficult to discern what the point of it is. That is one of them. It's a crazy thing to witness, but it's great fun.
Well, and I think it is a recurring theme through lots of these, is this sort of, you get beyond pain because you're in such a mind state of ecstasy. You relate it to the berserkers of the Nordic tradition who get into their like warlike mentality and can't feel pain. The one that's probably the most extreme in the book is the Fuck It Vegetarian Festival, or Nine Emperors Gods Festival in Thailand. And describe what you see there, because it's probably the furthest one could go as far as body mutilation in the course of a festival.
Yeah, it's very, very certainly the most extreme thing that I witnessed in the course of this book, researching the book. So, the island of Phuket in Thailand, and it's called, as you said, most commonly known as the Phuket Vegetarian Festival, which sounds very wholesome, but it's actually kind of the least wholesome thing you can imagine, because these. So the story goes, is around 200 years ago, there was an opera troupe from southern China, and they were touring in sort of the South China Sea, and they toured across Southeast Asia, and they went to Phuket, and they got stuck there when there was an epidemic, and they decided that the way that they would protect themselves from the epidemic would be to resume or to take up their Taoist religious practices from back home in southern China. So these included abstaining from meat, hence vegetarian, and also engaging in ritual self-mutilation. So to begin with, they would just kind of put skewers, like pierce their cheeks with skewers and things, which they still do. But over the decades and over the centuries, it's become much more elaborate and extreme. to the point. I mean, there's people there telling you who would tell you now, like, oh, it's just ridiculous now. It's not like how it used to be, because you see the stuff you see is just. I mean, I saw people with swords, like two swords diagonal, cross at a diagonal through their mouth, one through each cheek. A guy with a lamp through his face. A guy with a BMX bike frame through his face. And it's bizarre, obviously, to see people in that state, but it's even more bizarre to see them having these piercings done. So they go to the temple in the morning, or to the shrine rather, and they're what's called masong, which is like spirit mediums, effectively. So they would tell you that they get possessed by their deity, and then what you see them getting into this trance. So they like start retching, and then they start to shake, and their eyes are glazed over, and they're like that for the whole day, just shaking, like they just put down like a pneumatic drill sort of thing. And then they sit down and they have these things done. And I saw the guy with the swords have the swords put through his cheeks.
Yeah, and this is just so folks understand audio. This is taking two swords on different sides of your head and inserting it through the cheeks, through your mouth, between your teeth, and out the other cheek.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
these are full-size swords also.
Full-size swords. Yeah, there's a picture of it on my Instagram if you're that so inclined.
So stay away from that.
I saw him.
What's your handle in case anyone's interested?
It's at Dan Stabs, so DANSTABS. It's appropriate, actually.
Fitting, at Dan Stabs.
Yeah. So I saw him have this procedure done, and he did not flinch. He didn't move a muscle when he was, and there's no anesthetic involved. There is the power of the mind, the power of being in a trance, or I guess they would say the power of their chosen deity or whatever. But and then so they have these things done, and they file out of the shrine, and then they go on a procession through the town, through Phuket Old Town. And I had a guide, but I was like walking in the procession with them, and they're in a trance, wobbling around with various sharp objects sticking out of their faces, not having a clue where they're going, basically, and they're kind of getting guided along by attendants. And so I'm just constantly like walking along, watching my back, just trying to make sure I don't get stabbed by a rogue sword or skewer or whatever. So I mean, it's a very effective cure for jet lag, I can say that much. But it's an amazing experience. And just again, you sort of say, I mean, why do we go to people go to these lengths?
But for them, it's a religion, right? I mean, it's a major religious and spiritual. Though it sounds like from some of the locals, there's a feeling that is it moving to extreme sports and just stunt, which takes away that religious aspect of it for some.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one because yes, it's a religious thing. It's all centered around the shrines, the Chinese shrines in Phuket. And the idea, the kind of spiritual idea behind it is that these people suffer, on behalf of the wider community. So it's like by doing these extreme practices, which they deem to accumulate really good karma, really good, huge amounts of religious merit, they would say that kind of absolves the bad karma of the wider community, which kind of sounds kind of familiar, right, to someone from a Christian background. But then, like I said, some people saying, well, it's just ridiculous now. Like, why they do what? It's got too extreme. It's all about the people taking photos. Someone said to me, I met a guy, an anthropologist out there. We were sort of comparing notes on the what we'd seen that day, how extreme it was. And I said, I mean, do you think it's as authentic as it used to be? And he said, well, on the one hand, you can't really fake sticking a sword through your face. You don't. There's being like tourism savvy, and then there's that. It's quite an extreme thing to do. But then he said, and we were like comparing photos that we'd taken of like these guys and ladies with these various Baroque things just sticking through their faces, and they were like posing for the pictures. And this guy said to me, how do the gods know to pose for photograph.
Right. Even while possessed, they know how to get on
Even well
Instagram.
possessed. And I thought that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are lots of festivals across the world where it's very easy to point the finger and say, well, you're just doing that for the Instagram likes, or you're doing it for tours to attract tourists, you're doing it for money. But when you're saying to someone, well, you're just sticking a sword through your face for money, for those reasons, it's kind of like becomes a bit, because the individuals don't make,
Sure.
they don't get paid for it.
Yeah.
So,
well, you touch on that too in the Catholic ceremonies, Romeria del Rocco in Spain, where Rocio, is that how do you pronounce
it? Rocio.
Rocio. Okay, let me.
Rocio, yeah.
You touch on this too in the Catholic festival. I wasn't familiar with it, and it had a level of violence that you don't typically associate with kind of Catholic ceremonies. It's in Spain and Andalusia, called Romeria de El Rocio. And why don't you describe that? It has aspects that will sound familiar to Catholics with statues of saints and things, but then there's this kind of frenzy and violence involved.
Yeah, so it's a yearly pilgrimage. It's kind of the biggest fiesta in Spain, I would say. It's not the biggest, not the most famous pilgrimage, because that'd be the Camino de Santiago, but it's probably the biggest party. I mean, they say as many as 1 million people descend on this little town of El Rocio. I personally think that's a bit of an overstatement, but it's certainly hundreds of thousands of people. And they walk from their various churches across Spain, and they arrive at this town called El Rocio, where there's a famous statue of the Virgin Mary, which, as you say, like so far sounds pretty kind of standard for a Catholic pilgrimage.
Yeah, standard Catholic stuff.
Yeah, the thing that first got me interested in it was you often see it described as the drunken pilgrimage, and I immediately am drawn to that kind of juxtaposition of spirituality and kind of depravity and debauchery. And so I sort of looked into it, and then I was trying to find, I don't speak Spanish, so for a long time I was trying to find a guide and a translator who would go with me. And everybody I emailed, all the tour companies I emailed, I'd get a kind of concerned response saying like, "Oh, you absolutely sure you want to do this? They get really drunk and they take loads of drugs and they get really violent inside the church. It's very dangerous. You don't really want to be doing this." And which obviously just had the effect of making me absolutely convinced I wanted to do it.
That's a chapter writing itself right there.
Exactly. Yeah. What kind of pilgrimage, can you describe in those terms? So eventually I did find someone with sort of loose enough morals to send me a guide and a translator. And so effectively I joined the sort of branch of the pilgrimage that goes from Seville, from a church in Seville. And I walked with the pilgrims for 2 days down to El Rocio, and it's an amazing physical setting. It goes through this national park called the Doñana, which is sort of wetland, sand dunes, grassland sort of area, and you're not normally allowed to walk in it at all. Normally you can go on a jeep tour, but that's it. So that again really adds to that liminal thing again, this feeling of being, partly because you're in a wetland and it's like half land, half sea, but also you're somewhere that you're not normally allowed to be.
Also, if I recall correctly, it gets wetter because it basically becomes an open latrine for thousands of people walking through.
That's true. Yeah. And it gets very, very crazy and very sort of loose. And I mean, the drunken pilgrimage is a very good descriptor. They kind of, I mean, there's this thing in Spanish popular religiosity, especially, where they kind of have, there's no conflict whatsoever between having a party and having a very religious event. They don't see those things as mutually exclusive at all. And in fact, that's kind of why I chose Fiesta as the name of the book, because Fiesta has this, it's a religious occasion, it's a feast, it's a saint's day, it's a party. In Spanish, it has all these meanings, and it kind of has a wider meaning than just the word festival. So that's why I chose it for the encompass the different meanings of the festival thing that I cover in the book. But that thing of Spanish popular religiosity is never more pronounced than at the Romeria, because they get extremely drunk all the way through. They camp along the way, stay in campsites. and they're sort of playing flamenco songs, and they yeah. So you just see some crazy things, like these people, like some guy I saw like wrestling a wild boar, and people just like standing around and laughing at it, like, and people behave badly, you know. Then I'm not condoning this
Yeah,
behavior at all.
yeah,
But then the way it culminates is they finally arrive at the church in El Rocio. El Rocio, incidentally, is amazing as well. It's often described as the strangest town in Spain. There's no cars, and it's just dust, and it's like a Wild West sort of film set, is what it looks like, because it's just these dusty roads, low slung houses with horse posts lined up outside them. And then during the Romeria, just thousands and thousands of people coming and going all the time. So the whole place is shrouded in this like orange dust. And everyone dresses up in their traditional Andalusian clothing. So it really does look like it's an amazing spectacle. But they finally get to the town. And then on the last night, the whole thing that it all culminates in is one of the brotherhoods, as they're called, of the churches from a town called Almonte, which is not far away from El Rocio. They're the ones who originated this pilgrimage, and they do a thing called El Salto, which means the jump, where they go into the church and they form a kind of human like ladder, basically like a scrum, and then a human ladder, and they very violently, they're fighting each other to get to the top of this ladder, throwing punches at each other, just tearing each other off, throwing them onto the floor of the church. It's always like young men, as you can sort of imagine. And then they get to the top of the ladder and they jump over the altar, and they seize the statue of the Virgin, take it out of its kind of enclosure,
yeah,
take it out of the church and parade it around town for, I mean, like 8 hours, 9 hours, and they're in again like a trance.
Yeah.
And this happens. So the jump happens at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, and so everyone's drunk, a lot of them on various other things, and they've been drinking all day, and then they do this for 8 or 9 hours, and they're all, and the violence just never leaves the statue. So it's this scrum of people, all from the Brotherhood, clinging onto the statue, processing it around the town. And if anybody who's an outsider gets close, they're just getting punched, kicked, bitten, you know, like
yeah,
they're not allowed. And again, this is a thing which comes up in other festivals as well. This thing of it's all about they set it up as it's them against the world, but the idea ultimately is that it's about strengthening their own kind of identity, I think.
Yeah.
But again, it's a very extreme way of doing it. But this is what festivals.
And is there any sense there that while they reject outsiders, there's a little bit of an attention, you know, getting that attention is also part of the violence?
1,000,000%. I mean, they will always, I'm trying to remember the word in Spanish, but they describe anyone who isn't from Almonte, their small town, they describe as a foreigner, effectively. Even though like 99% of people at the pilgrimage are foreigners, even if they're Spanish, foreigners to them. But they do this thing. So they have this very aggressive attitude towards outsiders getting close, but also even when you're around town, if you take pictures, so I had my camera and I was taking pictures of these people dressed in their traditional sort of dress, on horseback, a lot of them. And so I'd lift my camera to take a picture, and they would shout at me and say, no, you know, go away, sort of thing, in slightly less polite terms than that. But so then I would lower my camera, and then they would sort of beckon me back and go, no, it's okay, you can take a picture. Yeah, so it's like, it's performative, you know. They want, and I think that ultimate act of kind of ritual violence in the church is also performative, but it's real, you know, because you see them smacking each other in the face, and so it's a really interesting kind of, it's like a theater play, but it's real as well, and it really represents that I was saying about that Spanish popular religiosity, where the religion of the people, as they see it, has nothing to do with the church and the authorities. And in fact, they actually see the church as kind of getting in the way. So they have this, you know, their fixation is on the Virgin Mary, effectively. So much more than on Jesus or God even. So they I mean, you see it in the church in Almonte. It's almost, you've got like priests and curates like scattering as they try, when they decide to jump over the altar. It's
Well,
like,
that
okay, this is
I
their.
like the idea that after this 12 hours of debauchery, somebody has to quietly bring the icon back and put it back onto the
Yeah,
altar till
that's a
next
very good
year.
point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But
I'm
yeah,
very curious about whose job that is to keep track of the
yeah,
darn thing.
yeah. It's probably some poor, junior member of the clergy, I imagine.
Yeah,
Who
I
has
mean,
to.
it's very interesting. Like, I think it also relates to, you see in a lot of Central and South American cultures where, the ancient pagan religions were kind of brought into the Catholic traditions. And when you visit those places, I mean, I've seen it in Guatemala. My co-host is often in Mexico, and in the Day of the Dead celebrations,
Yeah,
you see a lot of that iconography. The Catholic Church recognized you got to bring that in, or you got to create times of year where that can be part of the ceremony. It's amazing, hundreds of years on, that persists. I mean, I think it's quite beautiful that persists, because it just resists this kind of whitewashing of the world where we're all getting so close and so connected that,
yeah.
like, it can become very generic. But I think
Mm.
for those who experience it, I mean, the violence and stuff, it's very foreign to me. That sort of frenzy state is not something I've experienced. But you, having seen it firsthand, it seems like you did experience moments where you do see that sort of ecstasy in the actual, like, religious side of it. I feel like, one of the stories that I found most moving was the whirling dervishes and the training that goes in and the ecstasy that they feel. So give a sense of that Sufi tradition in Turkey and the training that goes into trying to experience that ecstasy in a much more controlled way.
Mm. Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, that the account of the Whirling Dervish Festival, it's a festival called Shebia Rus, and it's held each December in the city of Konya in Turkey, which is one of the holiest cities in the country. And the reason it's such a holy city is because it was the home of Rumi, who, lots of American
Mhm.
listeners will be familiar with. Rumi is one of the best-selling poets in the United States.
Right. In
Kind,
translation.
kind, kind of.
Yeah.
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 So funny enough, when I was at university, I had my dissertation supervisor. I studied Islamic poetry, and one of my teacher, who then was my dissertation supervisor, was very kind of at his wit's end about these kind of dubious translations or interpretations, as they are, because of Rumi. They're often done by people who actually don't speak Persian, which is the language it was written in, and they're kind of become very like Instagramified and
Yeah.
Hollywoodified. Which is when I was in Konya, actually, I was reading the English language newspaper, and there was a big double page spread about Hollywood's love for Rumi and all these celebrities who have tattoos of Rumi quotes, and actually they're not really Rumi quotes at all.
Yeah,
But
they're like brainyquotes.com.
literally that, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Rumi, before he was Hollywood's favorite poet, was a Islamic mystic in the medieval era, and he founded the order of the whirling dervishes, who are so named because they spin around and they do this dance where they spin around in kind of religious ecstasy. It's kind of, that's the ultimate, it's this thing of trance state again. The reason I chose, and so each December, Shebia Rus is their kind of the Whirling Dervishes kind of festival, basically. And the reason I chose it, again, it's that thing of not wanting to be too obvious. The chapter is about altered states of consciousness and their relation to festivals. And so, I could very easily have gone to the jungle in Costa Rica or something and just gone to a psychedelic entheogenic drugs festival and probably
Right.
had a
Right.
brilliant time.
Yeah.
But
Well, you do go to Burning Man, to be fair.
yeah, I actually didn't go to Burning Man. I talk about Burning Man, but then I
Okay.
decided to. Well, I did try and get a ticket for Burning Man, but I couldn't. It was sold out, and then I also realized I was going to be spending that chapter sort of criticizing them for being hypocrites about their eco credentials and
Right,
stuff. So I
right,
thought
right.
I can't really fly to Nevada to do that and then fly home again. That would seem a bit hypocritical. But yeah, so I decided to go to Shebia Rus instead, because they very much are about altered states, peak experiences, heightened states of consciousness, but they're devout Muslims, so there's no drugs involved, there's no alcohol involved. It's just through this kind of dancing. So again, I wanted to kind of present a slightly less obvious way of making the point, but it's really striking when you talk to them and you talk to them about what they experience, and then you compare that to the sort of writings of people like Terence McKenna, these kind of like psychedelic gurus, Timothy Leary, whatever. It's really, really similar. They're really striking at the same sort of outcomes.
Can you describe the dance, the costume, the symbolism in the ceremony?
Sure. Yeah. So basically their outfit is a metaphor for the death of the ego. So again, this is going to the psychedelic drug connection. It's all about ego death, So the point of their whirling, as they see it, is it dissolves the ego, and by dissolving the ego, you get closer to the divine, or closer to God, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So they wear these big, tall, conical hats, which represent a tombstone for the ego. And they wear these huge cloaks, and they sort of start the dance by shuffling along very slowly and rhythmically, and then they throw off their cloaks, and they're wearing these white sort of robes and skirts underneath, and these represent their grave clothes. And then they start spinning around, and the skirts kind of, I don't know how to describe it. They like, as they spin around, the skirts kind of, they almost look like spinning tops. It's very mesmerizing.
Yeah.
And
they're spinning on one foot. Is that right?
They're spinning on one foot. Yeah. And the way they train for that is kind of, I mean, I think it's not quite as brutal as it used to be. The training is the understanding I get. I spoke to a guy who said that they used to have to like kneel on a sheepskin rug for like 3 days without moving, stuff like that. But they still do a thing now where they whirl to train. They'll have an upright nail underneath their heel, so they'll be up on their toes on that foot. And obviously, if they lose their footing and they slip, then their punishment is their heel goes down on an upright nail. And they still do that because the way that they whirl is they do it on one toe, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And they spin around in the same direction every time. So the strength and the poise, you need in one leg to do that is crazy. But again, yeah, they're in this trance, and you can kind of see them. And when you're sitting I was sitting quite close to this side of the arena, and they're kind of like they're doing this very, very elaborate, well, it's simple, but it's very impressive, kind of consistent dance. But then so you look at their faces, and they're all kind of like eyes rolling back in their heads, like sweating and making little like barks, almost like making weird noises. It's a really kind of interesting thing to witness, but it really starts to make you feel a bit like you're in a trance yourself when you watch it.
It sounds otherworldly. You said, even though their eyes are closed, they maintain the right distance from each other. Yeah. And they're supposed to be basically saying Allah, Allah, Allah with each spin. And the idea is that they're kind of separating and connecting with God as they spin further and further. And how long is that in total, that performance?
It's a good question. I think it's maybe, I don't know, 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
I mean, that's a really long time. I mean, it's a great physical feat.
It is, and they do it, all the time. They do it like
right.
They kind of. That's an interesting one. I mean, talking about the question of authenticity of festivals and these religious traditions. Traditionally, Shebi, or it's called the Sema, this whirling practice, SEMA, and traditionally it was a private practice. Like they would do it among themselves. It wasn't to an audience, and they. When modern Turkey was founded by Ataturk, he passed all these laws which were all about secularizing, getting rid of the religious orders because he saw them as a threat, effectively. And so Sufism became illegal. And technically speaking, the Sufi orders still are illegal in Turkey. But they kind of realized that there was some value, whether that's monetary value or cultural value, in preserving this as kind of a cultural heritage type thing. So it's allowed now, but it's kind of a cultural heritage performance. And so some people would tell you, oh, well, it's, that means it's not authentic then. But then when I speak to the people who were performing, the people involved with it, there's no question for them. It's a very, very, it's not just a thing they do because they
Right,
go
right.
to work and doing it.
Yeah.
It's a very profound spiritual experience for them, and it's one that they wouldn't get to do otherwise. So it's
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword, really.
And they're not just performers from your description. Yeah.
No.
So, final few questions. The first is, I assume that there were some festivals that you just couldn't work out for logistics reasons or because you couldn't find a guide. So, what's one or two examples that were on that list that for some reason you couldn't get to that you'd still hope to attend?
Well, I would have loved to have gone to the Kumbh Mela in India this year. So it happens every 12 years. So it's kind of a long, I mean, there are various sub strata of it. There are smaller ones that happen every 4 years, every 8 years. The main one happens every 12 years. It moves around different locations in India. It's the biggest gathering of people on earth, millions of people. And this one just gone was which was this year, was the biggest one ever. And I think it was something to do with some particular celestial astronomical alignment meant that it was an extra special one. And I love Indian culture, Indian religion. It's a Hindu festival. And you have, it's famous for the sadhus, the Hindu ascetics who would be there smeared in ash, often completely naked, like dreadlocked hair, doing very extreme kind of religious practices, and people kind of go to see them and pay respects to them. And there's all sorts of amazing music and food and cool experiences, and it kind of moves around a bit like a kind of amorphous thing. I just couldn't go this year. It was just, I had too much other stuff to do, so that was a shame. But one day I'd like to go to that. You mentioned the Day of the Dead in Mexico. I would love to go to that. That was another one. That's when I told them I was writing about cultural festivals, that's one of the ones they always say is Day of the Dead in it. And I love Mexico, and I spent a couple of months in Mexico a few years back, but it just wasn't at that time of year. And ever since, I've wanted to go back at that time of year. So yeah, I'd love to go. There's a place called Pátzcuaro in Mexico where it's on a lake, the Spire Lake, and on the Day of the Dead, on the night of the Day of the Dead, they get in these little rowing boats and they row out to the island, which is like a cemetery island, and it's all candle lit, and they sort of pay respects and have a bit of a party there. I'd love to do that. Rio Carnival is another one as well. It's kind of an obvious answer. I just went to Brazil for the first time a month or two ago, and everyone said to me, "You got to come back during Carnival." That's one of the things that festivals are really. Again, you asked right at the beginning, why did I want to write a book about festivals? I think everyone can relate to having traveled somewhere, and then a local will say to them, "Oh, you've got to come back at XYZ time of year to come to this festival," because there are certain times where it just seems to be like, proper bucket list sort of stuff. And I think Rio Carnival is definitely
one of those. I think there's enough for a sequel here. It sounds like based on the Indian festival, it'll be 2037. We can look for Fiesta Dos.
Okay, all right, something to work towards.
And as far as the publication, your book Fiesta comes out this month in Europe. And I believe it'll be later this year, maybe January, when it comes out in the US. So we'll be sure to bring it back onto the podcast. We'll probably replay this interview to launch when it comes out. But I'll say for our American listeners, you can buy it through Amazon in the UK or in other European countries and have it shipped here. But I'll leave it to them to figure out the logistics of that.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the book. Thank you for the education on so many festivals around the world. And you've certainly extended my bucket list.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
And now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, we're here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. That's why we call it the last stop. It's your favorite segment. It's my favorite segment. It's popularly known as the people's segment. And that's because it's a moment for us to come together, much like all the people come together during fiestas. That's right, like Daniel Stables introduced us to. So, and it's a moment for us to come together as a community, Ryan, to share. We can bring anything. It can be a memory, it could be a dream, could be an anecdote, something you're planning, an article, a tip, anything. as long as it inspires the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, as I ask you every episode, do you have a last stop this week?
I do, Kiernan. I've gotten really into Gabriel Garcia Marquez in the last couple of years as I've been, spending a lot of time in Colombia. I read 100 Days of Solitude. I just finished his book, News on a Kidnapping, about the Escobar kidnappings in the 80s. And, he is Colombia's greatest novelist. He's, largely credited with sort of inventing the South American magical realism type of literature that's become so important here and around the world. And I just found out that he is buried in Cartagena.
Oh
So
my gosh.
this week I'm going to go check out his grave, which is at the university here in a little area called the Cloister of Mercy.
Ooh,
And
Cloister of Mercy.
yeah, so I'm excited to see it. And I was reading about his funeral. He passed away in 2016, and he was one of 10 kids. Um, a pretty big family, and his sister spoke at the funeral, so she was still living back there in 2016. But they decorated the whole thing with yellow butterflies, and yellow butterflies are a big part of 100 Days of Solitude, the book. And I was just walking around Cartagena today, and I saw this incredible mural of Marquez reading 100 Years of Solitude, and he's looking up, and they had sort of 3D yellow butterflies as part of the murals that kind of popped out. So I'll post that on the show notes. A lot of yellow butterflies going on, and excited to see Gabo's. That's what we call him, Gabo's grave. Tomorrow.
One quick question I have for you is I saw something on your Instagram. You were touching a bunch of knobs trying to get married. I mean, I'm sorry. It was like it was a bumps or something. Knob. I mean, people could take that the wrong way. That is one way for you to get married. You touch a bunch of knobs.
They were sort of knobs, right? There are the knobs on this church, and the saying goes that if you touch enough of the knobs, you have to get married by the end of the year. So I did do it. So we will see if it works out. No proposal yet. It's only been the afternoon though.
All right, but as far as I knew, you're not seeking a partner, right?
I'm just challenging. I'm just challenging.
You were challenging
the world.
God. Okay.
I'm challenging God directly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I should say. God. All right. Well, best of luck.
All right. I'll tell you how it goes. Did you bring a last stop this week, Kiernan?
I did. And this is a tip, and it's also related to my London planning, which is I've come to appreciate. Now, you know the 3 Ps for a great souvenir, right?
I do. Price.
Yes.
Potency and portability.
And portability. Exactly right. And I've come to realize that some of the best souvenirs I have on my shelves marking my previous travels are toys. I really like because often they're very affordable. They're very potent. Where if you get a distinct one about the place, it kind of sucks you in, and portable because you're not buying these huge toys. And so I've talked about some on the show before, like the injected plastic molded moldoramas that you can get in around some of the Chicago museums, and it's kind of this weird obscure company that's been holding on. I've got this cool wooden block structure where you build basically totem poles, and it takes it's the art on it is inspired by the totem poles of the Pacific Northwest. It's a great way to like teach kids about what totem poles are and what the meaning is behind things. And just having recently gone on the Alaska trip, I actually played with that with Charlie and Penelope a ton, and it led to really good educational discussions. And so I was thinking about, obviously having been around London, I have some souvenirs of what I've liked before. British Museum, I got the Lewis Chessmen recreations. But I pulled off my shelf this book called The Traditional Shops and Restaurants of London, which somebody gave me as a stocking stuffer 10 years ago. And it was for sale. I see $4.98 on the back here. So Santa was cheaping out a little bit. But it came in extremely useful because I've been just really enjoying revisiting it. And it's about shops and pubs that have been open for 100 years, which is what you get all around London. And there is a toy shop that I vaguely remember. It's in Covent Garden, and it's called Benjamin Pollock's Toy Shop. And the name goes back to a toy dealer from the mid to late 19th century. And they specialize in these little paper. God, how do I even describe them? They're like paper. They're like paper sculptures that show scenes, and they're like little paper theaters, basically. And they're not super expensive.
Sort of like a pop-up book, but just always popped up.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Perfect way to put it. And they're inspired by fairy tales and great theatrical performances, and they're really beautifully crafted. And I was intimidated by them, and I had no money at the time I lived there, but I was intimidated by the building process of them. And I think this time might be when I actually bring one home. And talk about portable. These things pack flat.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's perfect.
I think it's going to be great.
And then you take it home and you put it up and it goes on a bookshelf, and it's sort of like one of those book nooks, but it's made of paper.
Yeah, and then it's got a little more sweat and tears in it.
Yeah. You don't think the book nooks have sweat and tears?
Nah, mass produced.
Don't ruin it for me. No, that's one of the things I've been enjoying is my two of my friends from high school. Their daughters are both like teenagers now, and so I'm just constantly just buying like jewelry for them and bringing it back. So they have like all this. They have like Peruvian jewelry and like Mexican jewelry.
Sure.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
good. I think that's a highly potent and portable.
Yeah.
Depending
definitely.
on how you're going, it could be pricey.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
Yeah, they're not old enough yet. Well, Kiernan, I think it's I wish you bon voyage in jolly old England, and next time we talk, you'll have one of these accents or something. It's gonna be fun.
No, I even when I lived there, I never put the accent. The only thing that's hard to avoid is saying cheers instead of thank you. That's a good innovation.
Cheers is good. I like cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Well, until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel
It's like some
podcast.
sort of weird Australian, German.
Top of the morning to you.
Seat taken.
Governor.